Corbyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the past year, 100,000 tonnes of bombs have been dropped on Gaza, the equivalent of 5 times of the power of the nuclear weapons used over Hiroshima and Nagasaki 80 years ago. That's resulted in the death of at least 60,000 people. And on top of that, we're now going to have the complete invasion of Gaza by Israel. At what point will the government actually cease all arms supplies and military cooperation with Israel, cease the use of RAF Akrotiri, and above all, stop the export of any parts for F-35 jets, which have been complicit in the killing of 60,000 people in Gaza? This surely is a time for the British government to say no, no more, no weapons, no cooperation, no support to save lives in Gaza and, of course, in the West Bank. Now is the time to say and do that.
Hear, hear.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I've set out the position in relation to the carve-out for F-35 components. Just to be clear to the House, we have suspended the sale of F-35 parts where they go directly to Israel. It is only in a position where we do not know their final destination that they are not suspended. And I won't rehearse the recognition points given the pressures of time.
Paul Wall.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let's be clear, the master murderers of Hamas could end the suffering of the Gazan people today if they release the hostages and they agree to a ceasefire. But let's also be clear that this extremist Israeli government, in its own actions in the last few days and the last few weeks, is endangering the state of Israel. As the Right Honourable Member for the Wrekin has just made absolutely clear, he's undermining the state of Israel by its actions more than any Hamas extremist could ever dream of. So does the Minister agree with me? And he talks about practical measures, he talks about pragmatism rather than symbolism. I agree with him. But isn't the most practical step this country could take to recognise the state of Palestine in conjunction with other states as soon as possible in order to move the peace process on?
I can assure my honourable friend that we do want to move this process on towards a political horizon, towards a peaceful solution, as quickly as we possibly can.
Dr Andrew Merrison.
Deputy Speaker, I've been in the Minister's shoes and I do sympathise with him as he grapples with an extremely complicated and fraught situation. But does he agree with me that there cannot be any sustainable peace in the region or a viable Palestine without dealing with Hamas? And if so, what will be his plan to achieve that with others beyond pious rhetoric and hand-wringing?
Minister.
The honourable gentleman is knowledgeable and experienced. His right to focus on the central importance of removing Hamas from any position in Gaza where they could pose a threat both to the Palestinian people and indeed the Israeli civilians who have suffered so terribly at their hands. The answer is to remove Hamas and have the Palestinian Authority return in their rightful place as the sole legitimate governing authority for both the West Bank and Gaza.
Tandisi.
Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Speaker, in addition to continuing its cruel aid blockade deplorably, a far-right Israeli minister has told a gathering in the occupied Palestinian territories that Gaza is to be entirely destroyed and Palestinians will be forced to flee in large numbers to third countries. Will the minister wholeheartedly condemn this in addition to the intended proposals to expand the Netanyahu regime's military operations in Gaza and confirm to the House what exactly is the government doing with its international allies to stop these cruel and callous proposals?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friends. I haven't seen the remarks, as I said to the honourable friend from my benches, I haven't seen these remarks, but we have been clear what we think is acceptable, and we have condemned remarks from other Israeli ministers. And once I've had an opportunity to review them, I'm sure I will be in a position to provide a further comment. And I do reiterate our condemnation of the cruelty of some of the measures that have been put in place, particularly the block on aid into Gaza.
Vicky Slade.
Thank Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. An Israeli human rights group has now described Israel as using starvation as a method of warfare. This is a war crime under Article 54 of the Geneva Convention. So will he join Ireland, South Africa and many others in clarifying a genocide and apartheid against the people of Palestine? It is time to speak up and out and speak for Palestine.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I won't rehearse the points I've already made about determinations of genocide and indeed on recognition.
Afzal Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The evacuation orders of the Israeli forces have resulted in the forcible transfer of Palestinians in Gaza into ever-shrinking spaces, where they have little or no access to life-saving services and continue to be subjected to attacks. What steps is the government going to take to put pressure on Israel to ensure it does not go ahead with its plan to move Gaza's population? And does the government agree that the plans constitutes forcible displacement, which is a war crime?
Minister.
As I've said, Madam Deputy Speaker, we're clear on the status of forcible displacement under international law. I think my honourable friend's contribution is very important. I know many in this House are conscious of the multiple displacements of many Palestinians in Gaza who've been displaced not once, not twice, but in many cases more than 3 times, and the treatment of Palestinian civilians just trying to live is terrible, and I share the feelings of the House on it.
Ben Lake.
The UK Government was right to state at the International Court of Justice last week that Israel has a responsibility under international law to provide food and essential humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza, and yet we know that it has blocked all aid shipments for the past 2 months. Given the catastrophe unfolding before our eyes, is it not worth resurrecting negotiations and discussions with international allies as to the possible airdrop of humanitarian aid, so that at the very least we can't say that we sat idly by and watched an entire population starve?
Minister.
We have been involved in discussions about airdrops, and there is a role for them, and we've spoken with partners in the region who have been keen to see airdrops as a contribution, particularly given the pressures on aid. And I'm not ruling them out, but I must be clear with the House that given the scale of humanitarian aid, helicopter airdrops can only reach a certain level, and while that aid would be very welcome, it would be a very, very partial response to the scale of need that we see.
Rachel Hopkins.
Mr. Speaker, the Israeli government's plans to expand its military offensive in Gaza, including holding ground and moving the Palestinian population into the south of the Strip, is wholly unacceptable. It's a clear act of aggression and flies in the face of international law. I do welcome the Minister's statement that this government strongly condemns Israel's actions, but does he, accept from voices across the House that the recognition of Palestine as a state would be imperative to work towards a lasting peace?
Minister.
I do agree with my honourable friends that a Palestinian state, safe and secure alongside its neighbour, a safe and secure Israeli state, is going to, in the end, be the vital component of sustainable peace in the region.
Chris Law.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Gaza will be entirely destroyed. That's a direct quote from Israel's Minister of Finance, Bezalel Smotrich, earlier today. This is the language of ethnic cleansing and genocide. Yep. This is a pariah government that's using starvation as a weapon of war. Yep. Warnings the Israeli government will seek to displace the entire Palestinian population and flatten all of Gaza have been repeatedly ignored by this government over many months, yet this is now the reality that Gazans face. So given the UK government has continued to give continued support to Israel throughout this conflict, with reports an RAF jet flew to Israel with F-35 parts and military personnel only just last week, is it the case the British intelligence services and the Foreign Office have been blindsided by Israel's approved plan?
Minister.
If the honourable gentleman means, was the Foreign Office aware of the plan